My name is Scarlett Larson, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person to lose everything in 10 seconds flat. But there I was, sitting in the sleek Austin office of Harrington Solutions, staring at Kevin Harrington, the 28-year-old who'd been CEO for less than a day. "We're streamlining, Scarlett," he said, leaning against his desk, not even bothering to sit. "No dead weight. You're out." His Stanford diploma gleamed on the wall, still shiny with new frame smell, like he'd hung it to prove he belonged. Shock hit me like a Texas summer storm, sharp and unrelenting. 9 years I'd poured into this company, nights rewriting contracts, weekends untangling legal messes, all to keep Harrington Solutions ahead in the cutthroat world of tech consulting. And now this kid, handed the keys to his father's empire, was tossing me aside like yesterday's news. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. "I see. Can you put that in writing?" Kevin's lips twitched into a smirk, the kind you'd expect from someone who thought he'd already won. "HR's got something for you to sign on your way out. Security'll walk you." He turned to his laptop, dismissing me without a glance. I stood, smoothing my blazer, my mind racing. The office, once Samuel Harrington's, Kevin's father, the man who'd built this company from a garage, felt foreign now. I grabbed my notepad, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, watching confusion flicker across Kevin's face. He expected me to beg. I wouldn't. The security guard, Mike, trailed me awkwardly to my desk. I could feel the eyes of my team, their whispers buzzing like cicadas. My phone lit up with texts Patricia, my assistant, asking if I was okay, but I ignored them. In my drawer, I found it, the employment agreement Samuel had crafted 3 years ago when Peakpulse Technologies tried to steal me away. I slipped it into my bag, my pulse steadying. As Mike mumbled, "All set," I nodded. Almost. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked to the elevator, past shocked faces, and out into the humid Austin morning. In my car, I let out a breath I'd been holding. Kevin thought he'd cut me loose. He had no idea he'd just handed me the key to everything. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. Growing up in a dusty Texas town, it was just me and Mom, scraping by on her diner waitress tips. She'd come home with sore feet and stories of rude customers, but she always said, "Scarlett, you fight for what's yours, and you don't let anyone take it." That stuck with me. I clawed my way through law school, fueled by coffee and a need to prove I could outsmart the big shots in suits. When I landed an interview at Harrington Solutions 9 years ago, I was 26, hungry, and ready to make my mark. Samuel Harrington, the founder, interviewed me himself. His office was cluttered with blueprints and coffee mugs, a far cry from Kevin's polished setup. "Most lawyers just nod and sign," he said, squinting at my resume. "I need someone who'll call out my mistakes before I make them." I told him about a contract clause I'd spotted in my internship that saved my boss millions. He hired me on the spot. Over the years, I became more than a contract specialist. I was the one Samuel called when a client threatened to bolt, when regulators came knocking, or when a supplier played hardball. I rewrote agreements that saved Harrington Solutions millions, caught loopholes that could have sunk us, and earned a seat at Samuel's side. 3 years ago, Peakpulse Technologies, our biggest rival, offered me a salary that made my head spin. Samuel didn't just match it, he crafted an employment agreement that was my armor. A year's severance, stock options, and a clause letting me work for competitors if fired without cause. "Your family, Scarlett," he said as we signed. "This company's stronger because of you." I believed him. I gave everything to Harrington, late nights, skipped vacations, my whole heart. Then Samuel announced his retirement. We all knew Kevin, his son, would take over. Nepotism wasn't a dirty word here, it was expected. But I didn't expect Kevin's cold stare in meetings, brushing off my compliance reports as overcautious. Samuel always valued my thoroughness, but Kevin saw me as his father's shadow, not his ally. I started polishing my resume, sensing the shift. Still, nothing prepared me for how fast he'd swing the axe, or how badly he'd misjudge me. In my car, parked outside Harrington Solutions, the Austin skyline glinted through my windshield, all glass and ambition. My hands shook as I pulled the employment agreement from my bag, the paper worn from years of safekeeping. I flipped to the section I knew by heart, the one Samuel had insisted on 3 years ago when Peak Pulse tried to poach me. My eyes scanned the words: 1 year's severance at current salary, immediate vesting of stock options, non-compete waiver upon termination without cause, $250,000 early termination payout. A slow smile spread across my face. Kevin Harrington had just made the costliest mistake of his shiny new career. I leaned back, the leather seat creaking under me, and let the weight of the moment sink in. 9 years of loyalty, reduced to a 10-second firing, but this contract was my lifeline. I'd negotiated every word with Samuel, both of us hunched over coffee in his office, making sure I was protected. "You never know, Scarlett," he'd said, his eyes crinkling with that rare warmth. "Business can turn on a dime." He was right. Kevin hadn't even glanced at my file before swinging his axe. His arrogance was my opportunity. My phone buzzed, Patricia again, asking if I was okay. I typed a quick "I'm fine" and set it aside. The termination notice HR had shoved at me sat on the passenger seat, my name misspelled, Scarlett Larson with an extra I. Sloppy, just like Kevin's decision. I traced the clause again, feeling a spark of something new, not just anger, but power. This wasn't just about money, it was about justice. Kevin thought he could erase me, but he'd handed me a golden ticket. I tucked the agreement back into my bag, my heart steady now. The Austin sun burned bright, and so did my resolve. I started the car knowing the next call I made would change everything, not just for me, but for Harrington Solutions. Back in my Austin apartment, I spread the employment agreement across my dining table, the termination notice crumpled beside it. My heart still stung from Kevin's dismissal, but I wasn't about to let his arrogance define me. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus Reed, CEO of Peak Pulse Technologies. We'd met at industry events, his sharp wit always cutting through the small talk. "Scarlett Larson," he answered, his voice warm but curious. "What's this about?" I took a deep breath, the words spilling out. "I was let go from Harrington today." Kevin's call. A long pause followed, then Marcus's voice hardened. "His first day and he fires you? Did he read your contract?" I smirked. "Doubt it." I walked Marcus through the key clauses, the severance, the stock options, the non-compete waiver. He whistled low. "That's a hell of a package. Kevin's in for a rude awakening." Then he got to business. "We're expanding in Austin, Scarlett. Your knowledge of Harrington's contracts and clients could give us an edge." "Interested?" My pulse quickened. Peak Pulse wasn't just a job. It was a chance to rewrite my story. We talked for an hour: salary, responsibilities, a director role that doubled what Harrington paid me. By the end, Marcus promised a formal offer by morning. "You're exactly what we need," he said. I hung up, staring at the papers on my table. The hurt of Kevin's betrayal still lingered, but it was fading, replaced by a fire I hadn't felt since law school. My phone buzzed, Patricia texting, Kevin's holding an all-hands meeting. New direction, his own team. Everyone's freaking out. I typed back, "Keep me posted." Then another text, "Samuel is flying back tomorrow." My eyebrows shot up. Samuel, on a Caribbean cruise for his retirement, cutting it short? Kevin must have told him about me. I leaned back, a plan forming. Tomorrow, Harrington Solutions would see I wasn't the dead weight Kevin thought I was. The next morning, I woke with a knot in my stomach, but not from fear, anticipation. Samuel Harrington, the man who'd given me a chance 9 years ago, was back in Austin, likely fuming over Kevin's stunt. I didn't need Patricia's text to know the office was buzzing. Samuel is in early. He and Kevin are in the conference room. It's intense. I dressed in my sharpest blazer, the one I wore for big client pitches, and drove to Harrington Solutions. This wasn't about crawling back, it was about setting things right. The receptionist, Tara, did a double-take as I strode through the glass doors. "Scarlett?" I thought. I smiled, calm as a Texas breeze. "Is Samuel in?" Her eyes widened. "Yeah, but it's a war zone up there." I nodded and hit the elevator. As the doors opened on the executive floor, I heard Samuel's voice, usually so steady, booming down the hall. Did you even read her agreement before you fired her? My heels clicked on the marble as I approached, passing a cluster of execs pretending to check their phones. Patricia rushed over, whispering, "Scarlett, what are you doing here?" "I have a meeting," I said, keeping my eyes on the conference room. The door was ajar, and I caught Kevin's flushed face as he argued back, his voice tight. "It's my company now, Dad." Samuel's reply was sharp. "Not if you tank it on day one." I knocked lightly and stepped in. Kevin froze, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Samuel turned, his face softening. "Scarlett, perfect timing. Join us." He waved off the onlookers, shutting the door. Claire Bennett, HR head, sat at the table, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Papers were scattered, copies of my employment agreement, I noted. Samuel's eyes held a mix of apology and resolve. I squared my shoulders, ready to show Kevin exactly what he'd overlooked. Inside the conference room, the air was thick with tension, like a Texas thunderstorm about to break. Samuel sat at the head of the table, his silver hair catching the light, while Kevin stood, fists clenched, his face a mix of anger and shock at seeing me. Claire Bennett shuffled papers nervously, avoiding my gaze. "Claire was just explaining why your termination's a problem," Samuel said, his voice calm but pointed. He gestured for me to sit. I did, placing my bag on the table, my employment agreement tucked inside like a loaded gun. I spoke first, my tone even. "My agreement, signed 3 years ago, includes a year's severance, vested stock options, a non-compete waiver, and a $250,000 payout if fired without cause." Kevin's jaw tightened, but I held his gaze. "Page 7, paragraph 4, if you want to check." He snatched a copy, flipping through it frantically, his confidence crumbling. Samuel watched, his expression heavy with disappointment. "I told you, Kevin, details matter. You didn't even look." Kevin's voice was sharp. "This can't be legal." I leaned forward. "It's binding. Signed by Samuel, still valid." Samuel turned to me, his eyes softening. "Scarlett, I'm sorry. Your termination's rescinded. Your job, your office, everything's yours again." My heart twisted. Samuel had always been fair, but I wasn't here to go back. "I appreciate that," I said, "but I've accepted a position at Peak Pulse Technologies. I start Monday as their Director of Contract Management." Kevin laughed, bitter. "You can't." "The non-compete," I cut him off. "Waived upon termination without cause." Page 9, paragraph 2. His face paled. Samuel sank into his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Peak Pulse, huh? Marcus Reed's lucky to have you." I nodded. "My agreement with them prohibits using Harrington's proprietary info. Marcus respects boundaries." Samuel's eyes flickered with respect, but Kevin's were burning. "What do you want, Scarlett?" Samuel asked, catching me off guard. I paused, the hurt of Kevin's dismissal flaring briefly. "What I'm owed," I said. "And for the people still here to be treated right." Kevin scoffed, but Samuel's gaze held mine, a silent promise. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. I pulled a folder from my bag, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest. "I'm proposing a consulting arrangement," I said, sliding it across the table to Samuel. "I'll guide your team through my active contracts, advise on client relationships, and ensure a smooth transition. In return, I get the compensation in my agreement, plus a consulting fee." Samuel skimmed the pages, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You've thought this through, Scarlett." I met his eyes. "It's what you hired me for." Kevin's face reddened. "This is blackmail." Samuel's voice was steel. "It's negotiation, Kevin. Something you'd understand if you'd learned the business instead of assuming you knew it all." The room went quiet, the weight of Samuel's words hanging heavy. Claire shifted uncomfortably, her pen tapping the table. I spoke calmly. "The agreement has strict confidentiality clauses. Marcus at Peak Pulse approved it to avoid any ethical issues." Kevin's eyes narrowed. "You're still helping a competitor." I held his gaze. "Only because you fired me without cause. This protects Harrington's clients and your team." Samuel handed the folder to Kevin. "Read it. Carefully this time." Kevin took it, his jaw tight, flipping through with a scowl. I could see his mind racing, realizing the value of what I offered, stability for the company he'd nearly destabilized. This expires today, I added. After that, we handle the termination package through lawyers. Kevin's head snapped up. An ultimatum? Practicality, I corrected. PeakPulse needs my full focus. They've been generous to allow this. Samuel studied me, his eyes searching for anger or spite. He found none. You're fair, Scarlett, he said softly. Even when you don't have to be. He turned to Kevin. Step outside. I need a moment with Scarlett. Kevin hesitated, then stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Alone, Samuel sighed. He's got potential, but he's impatient. I thought handing him the reins would force him to grow. I was wrong. I nodded, choosing my words carefully. It's not my place to judge your decisions about Kevin. He chuckled, a tired sound. Still diplomatic. This proposal, it's smart. I'll sign it. Kevin will learn, one way or another. I felt a pang of nostalgia for the company I'd helped build, but I knew my future was elsewhere. The next week, I walked into Harrington Solutions not as an employee, but as a consultant, my heels clicking with purpose on the Austin office's marble floors. The first transition meeting was as tense as I'd expected. Kevin sat at the conference table, arms crossed, his face a mask of sullen defiance. Samuel watched from the head, his presence a quiet anchor. I opened my laptop, pulling up detailed notes on every contract I'd managed, client quirks, regulatory traps, negotiation tricks. Let's start with the Larson account, I said, my voice steady. They're picky about deadlines, but flexible on pricing if you frame it right. Kevin stayed silent, his pen untouched. My team, Patricia, the analysts, the junior lawyers, scribbled notes, their eyes flicking between me and Kevin. Samuel broke the silence with a question about a regulatory clause, and I answered, feeling the old rhythm of problem-solving return. Over the next 2 months, I split my time between these meetings and my new role at PeakPulse Technologies. Each session at Harrington got a little less icy. Kevin started asking questions, small ones at first, about client preferences, then bigger ones about contract structures. By the third week, he was taking notes, his arrogance giving way to something like focus. One morning, Samuel pulled me aside after a meeting. You're doing this right, Scarlett, he said, his voice low. It'd be easy to let them flounder, but you're not. I shrugged, the weight of 9 years at Harrington tugging at me. Screwing over clients doesn't fix what Kevin did. It just hurts the people still here. He nodded, respect in his eyes. Always the professional. Back at PeakPulse, I was settling in, my office overlooking Austin's skyline. My knowledge of Harrington's contracts helped PeakPulse snag 2 major clients in weeks, and Marcus Reed was thrilled. You're a game changer, Scarlett, he said over coffee. I smiled, but inside, I felt the sting of leaving a place I'd helped build. Still, every question Kevin asked, every note he took, felt like a small victory, not revenge, but proof I'd been more than dead weight. I was building something new, and Harrington Solutions was starting to see what they'd lost. At PeakPulse Technologies, I hit the ground running. My office, all glass and natural light, overlooked Austin's bustling downtown, a stark contrast to the windowless cube I'd had at Harrington Solutions. Marcus Reed gave me free rein to overhaul their contract processes, and I dove in, using everything I'd learned over 9 years. I spotted gaps in their agreements, tightened clauses, and pitched strategies to win over clients I knew from Harrington without crossing ethical lines. Within a month, we'd secured 3 major deals, and Marcus called me into his office. Scarlett, you're making waves, he said, grinning. Keep this up, and we'll talk VP soon. My chest swelled with pride, but a small part of me still ached for the company I'd left behind. Back at Harrington, the transition meetings were wrapping up. Kevin's attitude had shifted. He wasn't warm, but he was engaged, asking about risk mitigation and supplier terms. Patricia texted me updates. He's actually listening now. It's weird. I smiled, remembering the arrogant kid who'd fired me. Maybe Samuel was right about his potential. Still, I kept my focus on PeakPulse, where my work felt like a fresh start. Colleagues there asked about my exit from Harrington, Word had spread fast in Austin's tight-knit business scene. I kept it professional, saying only it was time for a change. No need to air Kevin's dirty laundry. My success was speaking loud enough. One evening, after a long day, I sat in my apartment, sipping coffee and staring at the Austin skyline. The hurt of Kevin's dismissal had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence. I'd taken a blow and turned it into a leap forward. My phone buzzed. Another text from Patricia. Team misses you. Kevin's trying, but it's not the same. I typed back, they'll be fine. You've got this. I meant it. Harrington Solutions was my past, but Peak Pulse was my future. Every contract I signed, every client I won over, was proof I'd risen above Kevin's mistake. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, and Austin's business world was starting to notice. The final transition meeting at Harrington Solutions was quieter than I'd expected. The conference room, once a battlefield, felt almost collaborative. I walked the team through my last set of handover notes, detailing a tricky supplier contract. Kevin, seated across from me, jotted down points, his usual scowl replaced by focus. As I packed my laptop, he approached, his voice low. Scarlett, I underestimated you, he said, the words reluctant but real. I misjudged everything. I met his gaze, surprised. We all mess up, Kevin. Especially when we're new. Admitting it's the first step. He frowned, like he was chewing on the idea. The consulting ends next week. Would you consider extending it? Just for our toughest contracts. I raised an eyebrow. Why me? There are other consultants. He hesitated, then said, you know our business. And I need to show Dad I can learn. It wasn't an apology, but it was close. I saw a flicker of the humility Samuel had hoped for. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I can promise. He nodded, and for the first time, I felt a twinge of respect, not for the CEO who'd fired me, but for the man trying to grow. Leaving Harrington's building, I felt lighter. Austin's sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. I'd walked away with more than a payout. My reputation was stronger than ever. At Peak Pulse, I was reshaping their future, my expertise opening doors I hadn't dreamed of. Kevin's mistake had pushed me to a place I might never have reached otherwise. Revenge wasn't my goal. Rising so high he had to look up was. And from the way Austin's business scene was talking, I'd done just that. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've walked with me through betrayal, battles, and a comeback I didn't see coming. If my story hit you, hit that subscribe button and join us. Every contract I've signed, every fight I've won, tells a story of grit, heart, and starting over. Keep chasing your own truth, and I'll meet you at the top.